Live in the Book of the Face.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, man, good to see you.
You too.
Oops, third page. Council going live. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Veterans Action Council. We are at our roundtable number 22, and we wanted to go straight into this week about the discussion of Afghanistan. Many of our brothers and sisters are aware of what's transpired in Afghanistan this past week, and the reality is we have a lot of mixed feelings from our veterans who are Iraqi veterans from on the GWAT, Greater War on Terror, and Global War on Terror, and similar feelings to what happened when they pulled out of Iraq. And needless to say, it seems to be a different situation in Afghanistan. So we wanted to welcome our council members, Brian Buckley, Ricardo Prieta, Jeff Staker, Michael Krawitz, and myself. And we're going to have a talk about this. So we kind of just wanted to start off with a check and wanted to see how are you. And I'm going to start off with Council Member Buckley, because we know you served in the Marine Raiders there in Helmand Valley in Afghanistan. So how are you? How are your people?
Well, thanks for asking. You know, kind of my little journey, I guess, through this week to see how this all went down was, I was getting kind of text messages from guys I served with starting Friday night, and then Saturday kind of progressed. And then it was basically, I said, hey guys, I'm not even watching the news. And it was really Sunday. They're like, you got to turn this on. And that's ultimately when you saw the flag went down the embassy and you knew this is spiraled out of control. And it went from just heated anger to really just some depression when you start thinking about, people that went over there, people you lost, and to see this unravel within 72 hours, essentially. I mean, obviously this was kind of being built up, I would say probably since May and June. We kind of knew there was things were not going to plan, to just complete disgust, just how that we allowed this to happen. And this is completely self-inflicted. The thing that helped me cope with this was my immediate concern went to family members who lost loved ones over there, and just having that conversation with them and explaining to them, I know for a fact that these men and women went over there and they did their profession. They did what was asked of them and more. Even with our, Afghan partners, I mean, people don't give them the credit. And I think things kind of really were just poorly presented by our commander-in-chief in terms that they just gave up, where they've been fighting for 20 years and fighting. I mean, they've lost a lot of their people fighting for their freedom, and they were just put in a particular situation. Things that have definitely helped me too, I guess personally, mentioned talking with family members who lost loved one, Gold Star families, but then things like this, talking with you guys and picking up the phone and talking with some guys I haven't spoke to in a little while, but you guys know the drill. It's like automatically you're just right back at it. It's like you haven't even skipped a beat and just kind of going back and forth. It's just like the same thing we always talk about with veterans and post-traumatic stress and how dangerous isolation can be. And if I probably just sat in a room and just watch the news 24/7, I don't know what kind of mindset I'd be in right now, but just having the ability to come out and talk to people and kind of express some frustrations, doesn't matter political beliefs or not. I think we're all on the same page, and that was good for me and kind of helped me out spiritually, just to kind of get some things off my chest. And, now my thoughts are with the Americans and our Afghan partners who are over there, fighting for their lives, trying to get out. And hopefully that happens. And then, I know we'll get into this a little bit later. Then I think some things have to happen in order for this not to repeat itself, hopefully. But thank you.
Thank you, council member. Going over to council member Ricardo Prieta. He's an Iraq veteran, and I know this definitely brings up some not so fun memories, as well as some compassion and understanding for our fellow brothers and sisters who served in Afghanistan. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's for me, it's all the same war, even though I didn't go to Afghanistan. I did go to Iraq. I signed up right after 9/11 when we hadn't even gone to Iraq. So we were shipping out to go to Afghanistan. My cousin was already serving in Afghanistan. And right in boot camp, it was just like, well, shock and awe. And so it was just kind of 50-50 chance. I ended up in Baghdad. And then my war ended in 2005 for me personally. And I had to process what that meant, reintegrate, find myself, come to terms with a lot of things, a lot of uncomfortable truths, and then identify some ways that would help me be productive and get out of that isolation and destructive spiral I was in. But my heart goes out to our brothers and sisters who fought over there and who are still over there, and the Afghans who really put it on the line. It's just, these things go this way sometimes. There's a lot of things, a lot of considerations to be made, but I've been sleeping a lot and just kind of resting. And then I took time away from the TV, away from all the whatever, the noise, got in the garden and got some good quality time with my dogs, and they're still pushing me at it. They want to play right now, but so like you said, just reaching out, picking up the phone, and talking it out, and then coming to the meetings here and just working. Even it feels like the work that we do, like compared to everything, it's like, oh my God, really? Like, kind of sometimes can feel like, well, what am I doing with my life, or what is this all about? It's such a no-brainer issue, this cannabis issue, and then you see how it branches out and touches other things. And for me, it's just a way to try to feel like I'm doing something in a powerless situation. So a lot of thoughts, a lot of things. I don't want to take up too much time. I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, council member. Going over to council member Jeff Staker. How are you, bud? How are things going? How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Just we're still working here in Indiana, being just a CBD state. So you guys are talking this stuff, and it makes me think back to in between Desert Shield and Desert Storm. They took some Marines, the Guam and the Nassau, and went over to Mogadishu and evacuated the embassy over there. And within 72 hours, we evacuated like 11 other embassies and 360 odd personnel and stuff, and dropped them off in, I think, Yemen before we were right back up before Desert Shield became Desert Storm. So, but the thing is, I feel a lot for, these Marines and soldiers and airmen, everybody that served over there. You think, what the hell, what did we fight? What did we fight for and stuff like that? And I completely understand. But at the same time, obviously these Afghans, the government has, they have to fight for themselves and stuff. And maybe something will come back and, get these Taliban. But, obviously I know the evacuation is going the way it is. But, I think obviously it could be a lot worse because I'm seeing things that could happen that aren't happening. And we're still getting people out of there. And yeah, it's a sad situation, but what can you, this is the only thing you can do. So um, that's my viewpoint.
Thank you, council member. Over to council member Michael Crowitz. How are you,
Thanks,
sir?
man. Yeah, I'm doing good. I guess I'm sort of the straight man of this conversation as far as life experience goes. I served what they called, kind of laughingly, peacetime back in the 1980s. Now, I say laughingly because it was during the Cold War, where we were all sitting on the edge of our seat waiting for the big plume on the horizon. But yeah, I have so many emotions going through me this week. It has been a very emotional week, and I can really empathize with you guys. Having not even served there, the emotions that are flooding through me, I can't even imagine what you're experiencing. So yeah, it's frustrating as all hell, and you're only given certain pieces of the puzzle. I've been quick to caution everybody, not to try to guess on geopolitical stuff that we just don't have enough information to guess about. But, just a quick overview and looking at the history of Afghanistan, it's pretty easy to see that there's a lot of really great people there. I actually really feel like I identify with the people in Afghanistan a lot. And they've had it rough. They've been just volleyball in between Russia and the United States and Britain and whatever else, going back quite a ways in history, evidently. And I wrote in the chat so I could remember his name, to say his name right, Mohammed Zaki Anwari, the young fella who died trying to get on one of those transport planes the other day, and they found him in the wheel well, as Etienne was saying. And it's just such a tragedy, in any way, in any sense of the word. It's just such a tragedy. As cannabis people, we really have solidarity with the Afghan people, and going way back, the hashish from Afghanistan is easily up there in the top 10 best on earth, and would be, our trading partners, and we'd be overshadowing and pushing back the opium trade with hash instead of bullets. So I don't know. That's kind of my feelings at the moment. But I'm glad to be here. Glad to be the right side up, and I'm glad to be here for you guys.
Thank you. How am I? I'm conflicted. I lost a family member there. Jacques Fontaine was a SEAL, and that still hurts. Pain never goes away of that loss. And I knew when we went into Afghanistan, we were never going to be able to hold on to it. Numerous empires have tried, numerous empires have failed. And we failed to see the tribal realities that exist there. And we didn't win the hearts and minds like we anticipated we did. So my heart goes out to those that are striving for freedom. I hate to see any people repressed. I hate to see any people prosecuted, especially over religion. And there's going to be a lot of that happening, unfortunately. I just read how a soccer coach, female soccer coach, was telling the female soccer players in Afghanistan to burn their kits, scrub the internet of any of their information, because it's coming. And that's just the reality of what's taking place. And we had our try, and we had a chance to pull out with dignity. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And there's multiple people that deserve chastising over this. and it starts at the top for sure. But yeah, I'm angry, I'm conflicted, I'm sad. I feel empathy for my fellow brothers and sisters who have lost everything or lost a piece of their body on that battlefield there. And those that have had to help serve them and service them all the way through, and their families. There's a lot of people hurting right now. So reach out to your people, check in with those that you love and you care about in the service, and make sure they're okay. Just because they're smiling doesn't mean that they're okay with how everything is going. So we'll send love and respect there. So going on some of those things that I just did discuss, how do we keep this thing from happening again in the future? Our Vietnam vets warned me, and we're happy for my generation and the Desert Shield, Desert Storm generation, because our war was quick, easy. We got in, we got out. We knew we couldn't hold Iraq. Boom. Some reason it's considered a success. And to see what happened in Iraq was painful to see. We knew, because of how fast we overran that country back then, that eventually we would be back. And unfortunately, it was Rico's generation that were the benefiters of that reality. And then, of course, we're right here on the precipice, 2 weeks or so shy of the anniversary of 9/11, 20 years, which started this global war on terror. So I'm going to start off with Council Member Brian Buckley. So give us a little bit of the history of how we got here, and how do we keep this thing from happening in the future?
Can I ask a question?
Well, hold on. We get to Brian, and then we'll get.
I want to ask Brian a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking, Brian, you've been there as a Marine and stuff like that, and we know the Taliban has got a religious aspect about it. So kind of tell us about their mindset on what they think and what their determination on going forward. So if you could maybe enlighten the council and the web and stuff about what the enemy thinks and stuff like that, and what their ideology is, that would be helpful for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So really, there's some pretty good books out there if you guys really want to kind of understand this whole Taliban and Al Qaeda and how it all kind of came to be. One book I would say is really interesting. It's not very popular, but it's called Inside the Jihad. And it literally is a guy, he was from he was an Arab background from Europe, and he more or less kind of went in, infiltrated into an Al Qaeda training camp, and almost kind of converted all the way over, actually. I mean, he got so deep into it, but a very enlightening book. And then another one is called The Mission, the Men, and Me. It's written by a former Delta Force commander. And it really talks about his team was designated the Bin Laden team. And it really came out around the when they started kind of getting worked up here was during the Clinton presidency, that Bin Laden started doing his things. Embassies were being bombed. He essentially, I believe he was in the country of Chad at one point. They wanted to get rid of him. They just knew something wasn't right. They didn't want to kind of bring down all the heat that he was bringing. Essentially offered him up to the United States of America, but we didn't really deem him as a big threat at that point. But then when he started having to move, this is when the Taliban took over Afghanistan in the 1990s. To kind of go beyond that, if you guys, or before that, watch Charlie Wilson's war, you guys will kind of understand what happened with the Soviet-Afghan war, where we did help out on a clandestine side. And essentially we left, we really screwed up the end game on that one, where we just kind of left and provide a giant power vacuum. And so when all this started getting established, the Taliban had their foothold. They never controlled the northern part of Iraq, of Afghanistan. And that was due to a guy named General Massoud. And he was the commander of the Northern Alliance, and he was an ally of the United States of America. And when Al Qaeda moved into the Taliban, it really wasn't, or into Afghanistan, it wasn't really a marriage out of love. It was more of a marriage out of necessity, where the Taliban had a sanctuary. They were in control of most of Afghanistan, minus the north where Massoud had his forces. But Al-Qaeda came in and they had a lot of money. So they kind of worked that way. And when you'd go through the training camps, you kind of decide if you wanted to go with Al-Qaeda, or if you wanted to go with the Taliban, or you want to go with some Chechens and stuff like that. It was just basically like a universal training camp for terrorist activities. And, you know, at that point, when things started getting really interesting, you know, they instituted what they call Sharia law. And Sharia law is a very radical side of the Islam faith. It really, women have no rights at all. They essentially are a slave, if you want to call it that way. They have to wear burqas. I mean, they can only show their eyes. They do have to go through some genital mutilation they will do to them. And they really, I mean, they're forced into marriages, and it's just not anything that we could really comprehend as Americans. So at this point, when we kind of knew there were training camps, you know, these Delta guys were kind of looking at bin Laden. They were saying we need to do boots on the ground. Clinton kind of backed off on that. He didn't really want to do that. They literally did shoot a cruise missile at bin Laden, and he literally, you know, he just left the camp, what I heard minutes before, you know, almost to the point where he's looking at his rear view and he saw this training camp blow up. I mean, it was like that close. So this is kind of showing you the forward thinking of Osama bin Laden when he had everyone, he already had these pilots inside of America. They were training in Florida. And on September 9th, 2001, they staged what they basically told General Massoud it was like an international film crew to come in and conduct an interview with him. And when they went in there, they had suicide vests on and they blew themselves up, killing General Massoud, knowing full well what was about to happen in 2 days, knowing full well that they're going to wake up the wrath of American power. And our first link up would have been with Massoud and the Northern Alliance. Right. And then obviously 9/11 took place. We knew pretty quickly that it was Osama bin Laden, and we started to understand where he was. And you know, we ended up going in October. The first, we had to send in some other government agencies, went in first, strapped full of cash, and basically tried to form an alliance with the Northern Alliance. When Massoud was killed, the three kind of tribes basically broke up. So we had to kind of try to bring them together. And we really came in there pretty hard and fast. The Taliban was very much mechanized up at that point with weapons they had from the Soviets. And obviously they were getting funding from bin Laden. They could buy some more things. So it was it was almost essentially like believe it or not, a conventional war. I mean, they were a nation state in their eyes. We didn't recognize them, but they had capitals and all that. And we kind of quickly overran it to the point that we almost caught bin Laden in November of that year. And what happened was outside an area called Tora Bora, basically had him. We had special operators on the ground, some other people. And they even went to the point where they were dropping a couple of daisy cutters, which only the president of the United States can approve those. And what they said was they had bin Laden on the radio. He was crying to his men, apologizing to them. The individuals conducting the assault wanted more Army Rangers. They were denied. They wanted to keep an Afghan face on it. So basically the outer and inner cordon were Taliban tribes, or not Taliban, I'm sorry, Northern Alliance tribes. Bin Laden really threw a Hail Mary, went up to one of the warlords, said, hey, here's $1 million, whatever it was, looked the other way. And the guy took it, and bin Laden walked down. Obviously, he ended up in Abbottabad, Pakistan. And it was one of those things where it's very frustrating because our primary thing we wanted to do in Afghanistan was get bin Laden. And then number two was eliminate the Taliban. The Afghans were more of a, let's get rid of the Taliban. And if we can get bin Laden, that's fine. So we were working with an ally, did not have the same end state. And you kind of see what happens where their priorities weren't exactly our priorities. And then obviously the whole buildup kind of started going in there. We were trying to find bin Laden, and, you know, we had a lot of troops in there, and we did. We pretty much wiped out the Taliban for the most part. Now, that's the hard thing here when you're fighting insurgencies, because again, it's not like Germany and you go into world, like into Berlin and you take down the capital and it's over. These are networks you're taking on. And what we really started noticing was there were countries around there that were somewhat friendly with the Taliban. And I'm just going to call it out. Pakistan definitely works with the Taliban. And what we would face a lot was bringing, a lot of them would go down to Pakistan in the wintertime. And then during what they would call the spring offensive, is they would come up in May, and that's when they would basically grow their poppy, in particular in Helmand province. And that's when the fighting really started kicking up and through towards the end of the fall. And for my viewpoint, being in the Helmand province, and I spent time in Herat, Farah provinces, I was in Bagram, I was in Kabul, and I was in Kandahar. And for what we could really see what was going on in Helmand was we were just pushing a lot of water. It really wasn't established very well with key decision makers. They pretty much all fled, and just had farmers there who really had no right to the land. They were just there working. And we started talking about an exit strategy. We started kind of knocking down the nation building, and it just obviously wasn't working. And we started thinking about how are ways things could actually work with them. I mean, we owned the watches, but the Taliban definitely owned the time. And it was just a very big, long delay tactic. And from my standpoint, we were kind of saying, they should just really build a wall almost at Kandahar and just let the Afghan government run Kandahar and east. And you're just going to have the Taliban doing what they're going to do in the west. I mean, you have Iran there, you got Pakistan, and it just was a very difficult times to work. But at the end of the day, we all kind of knew, like, we just can't stay here forever, and we really need to make things, a little bit more surgical. And you understand you're fighting a very determined enemy. The hardened Taliban, to me, is they're very much believing in Sharia law. It is their way. They do not like our way of life at all. They do not think women really have any rights whatsoever. And they fully were indoctrinated, and they would bring people in and they would do the same thing, indoctrinate them into that, and they would kind of roll with it. And then you also had a majority of these people that we would encounter that were just put in a really crappy situation. The Taliban would go and they would maybe kill their firstborn son or punch their firstborn son and say, if you don't do this when you see Americans, I'm going to do this to the rest of your family. And they were very serious about that. So sometimes you would go and you would capture these people, and it was just like, a guy in the street, like, hey, what do you want me to do? I mean, you didn't break the back of an insurgency. They were just put in a very tough spot. And that's how insurgencies really do well, is they can get in population centers. They can do murder intimidation operations and kind of help fuel their thing and help the recruiting side. But the thing to me that was really kept my optimism going was compared to Iraq, where I didn't really know the soldiers we were training over there, how much they were really into their country. It was still very tribal. And I kind of felt they were just kind of doing this because they were getting paid. To me, a lot of these Afghans, they lived through the Taliban. I mean, that is like the dark ages, like medieval time, and they just did not like it, and they did not believe in it. And they were fighting for what they believed in, fighting for their country. And I just think we did some things, kind of put a little more of an American face on it, that I think we failed, I think, on our side to really understand their culture, understand what they were doing. I'm talking a lot here, so I kind of want to, get back to you guys. One thing for me, I think, in order for us to hopefully avoid this is clearly we got to get lessons learned on the battlefield. My job over there was to train and build capability and capacity within the 7th Afghan Special Forces Battalion. And I thought we did a really outstanding job with their enlisted side. There was a lot of things where I do believe you get these American commanders sometimes come in, think they're going to win the war in 7 months versus the long game like the Taliban was playing. I think we need to take a hard look at that. I mean, I even made a comment to all of you the other day where if I was king for the day, only medals I think U.S. service members should get are a POW medal and a Purple Heart medal. I really think people start chasing things, and it's like Napoleon said, it's amazing what a man will do for 3 inches of fabric with a shiny thing on the end of it. I felt at times when we were doing things and we were trying to build this capability, I really think people were looking at PowerPoints and trying to make them look very impressive. I had a really good Special Operation Task Force commander when he came and talked to my men and I one time, and he was asking, why can't you do this, or why aren't you doing that? One of my guys, rightfully so, stood up and said, sir, we don't take them from point A to point B. They have no idea where they're going. And they were blown away by that. And it's like, well, no, we're literally pushing these guys so hard and so fast to do missions that we're not even really giving them the proper training that's going to hold them over for a while. We're not really training the trainer. We're just training them to a certain standard and taking them out with us. And to his credit, he slowed down the op tempo for us, where, you know, we would say red was when they were on leave, yellow or amber was their training, and then green was their operation time. So instead of having to do ops during their training time, we actually pulled it back and let them start training, and you saw a big difference. You know, I thought their officer corps was lacking. I did not really feel like they really grasped command and control, or nor do I think we really kind of set them up for success on that. I think, again, it was trying to, hey, let's get them out. We got missions. Let's go. We're going to brief this to higher, and we're just going to kind of fudge things up as it went higher up the road. Things that are way above my pay grade. I think things just got fudged, and it looked really good on paper, but the reality on the ground wasn't matching up with it. And obviously, what you have to deal with in Afghanistan, I'd always tell people, I'm like, you know, we always think about our 401ks and this and that. I mean, these people literally wake up and they worry about eating breakfast, and then they start thinking, will I be around to get lunch, and how do I do it? I mean, they live in the moment. So there was very high corruption in the Afghan government. Obviously, you saw the president probably ran off with $150 million and went to a different country last week when he knew Kabul was going to fall. But that's just kind of the level of corruption you're facing over there. And I thought some of that went down to the officer corps, where, you know, one great thing about Americans, like any one of us here could have been a military officer if we so chose to be. It doesn't matter who your parents were or if they're high up in politics or anything like that. If you want, like, my dad was in the military for a couple of years, but there was no big lineage of Buckleys in the military. I just wanted to be a Marine officer, and I was one of the first Marines, I think, in our family, and, you know, off I went and did it. So I really thought there was kind of lacking there. And, you know, one story that kind of really highlighted to me was we had to go do a brief with our commander. So I mentored a colonel from the 7th Afghan Special Forces Battalion. And all of us who were doing that, the commando mission, we call it, flew into Kabul to have a meeting with our Afghan counterparts. And they were the ones supposed to be kind of sitting there and planning things out. I'm telling you, within about 7 minutes, it was just the Americans were kind of sitting around taking the lead and going. And the Afghans were all about that. I mean, we were just big brother to them. And another thing, too, I really thought you know, what we did to them in terms of how we just pulled out real quick without making sure they were set up. I mean, a lot of times when we fought, we were relying on close air support, and this is what they understood. And then they don't have that anymore. And then we're saying, well, they need to go out and just fight on their own and kind of figure it out. To sum it up, and I apologize, guys, I'm very long-winded on this one. I really think in terms of how do we avoid this, again, you know, we saw it in Saigon, and this might be a little bit, I don't know if it's going to be worse or what. I mean, we'll find out. But people need to be held accountable for this. And I'm not saying like some underling in the Pentagon that just like, oh, we got rid of that person. Like big names need to take a hard look. You know, I'm even going to throw it out there. I think they need to take a look at the president of the United States. You know, now you got the Pentagon and the president not even on the same page. But some of the higher ups who just kind of let this go and kind of want to brief things up again so it look good and set timelines instead of letting the conditions on the battlefield play out. They need to feel the pain. The residuals effects that it's going to have on this is just not the lives that we're losing and we're going to continue to lose for a little while. I mean, you got to think about all the military equipment was there, and this wasn't like a musket was left behind. I mean, we're talking some very sensitive things that people now have their hands on, and they're taking it apart and looking at them, and that's just not a good deal. But to me is, let this thing play out. Let the people in their positions right now do what they have to do, because there's no time to go tit for tat. But when we start slowing down and we start getting a lid on this thing, God willing we do, that's when I think, you know, there has to be some hardcore questions asked, some serious investigations, none of this partisan crap. It's just got to be, okay, everyone, we're American. Let's talk this one out. I don't care if they're a member of your party or not. If something went wrong, people need to be held accountable, because lives are being lost. And I really start worrying about some of our allies around the globe that depend on us. and we have some adversaries out there who would more than happy like to start slurping up more ground, this is going to hurt for a little bit. And it's, anyway, sorry, I talked enough. So apologize, ATN. Thank you.
No need to apologize. That was a lot I asked of you, and Jeff asked as well, of which you surmised so succinctly, as well as gave everybody a overwhelming understanding of the tribal realities that have led us to where we are currently. And there will now be, of course, those fighting against it. There will be uprisings, and there will even be people going over there for to be freedom fighters against the Taliban. We saw that the last time. We even had American, arrested and thrown in jail. My friend Todd McCormick actually knew the guy. But regardless, so that's real situations of people are going to be going over there and trying to fight against a situation. And it's, very dangerous, very deadly. The game is real. They're real bullets. If you're smart, you won't do it. If you're crazy, be careful out there. But bouncing around, I'll go over to Michael Krawitz. How do we keep this from happening again?
Yeah, as I said before, I really feel like we're missing so many pieces of the puzzle at the national level. What's really in the head of these folks, what the real decisions were, what the real stakes were. I know enough from the work that I've done at the national level and international level to know that every headline there's quite a bit behind the scenes that you don't know, about what led to that. And but I think you can look at patterns of behavior, and I think one pattern of behavior that really jumps out to me is the United States federal government being sort of reactionary instead of proactive in policy. Just kind of, a fluid pattern of this sort of short-term thinking and long-term problems, short-term gains with long-term negative consequences. I mean, some of the stuff I'm talking about even could be applied to the drug war. I mean, it really is. It's the same kind of thinking. It flows through. They do see, the government does, if nothing else, does seem to be consistent, consistently good where it's good, consistently shitty where it's shitty. And I see that. I definitely see that pattern. And gosh, we have this huge Pentagon. Somewhere in the Pentagon, I'm sure someone wrote a report that said exactly what we would have needed to know if it was implemented right. I just have to believe that. So, there's chain of command issues there, I guess, as well, to really, and maybe priorities, more than chain of command. I mean, if you have all the information but don't act on it, it's because you didn't have it within the priority to look at that information. So maybe it's a matter of priorities. And then it's back to the short-term gains and short-term political aspirations of the politicians. I don't know, looking back from my perspective, my age, it seems like there's just a few people in our government over the last 50 years or so that really seem to take an effort to understand long-term geopolitical stuff and really make, wise decisions on that. At least, the ones that really stood out in the public eye seem to be very few. I think we need a lot more of that long-term strategic thinking and not just blundering into things. I mean, I don't want to try to judge folks based on the limited information that I have, but I see patterns of behavior that, certainly the CIA has been caught up in 20 or 30 movies now, where the theme is always the same, where they got in over their head, they fucked up, they're backing the wrong side. I mean, this is a theme. I'm not pointing it out. I'm not the first one to point it out,
No, it is a theme, and that's a reality. But the best way to know your history is to not repeat it, and we're not learning from our history because the feeling of the loss of the hearts and minds or something we learned from our Vietnam veterans, and apparently it seems to be something we did not necessarily learn quite well, or as well as we needed to to be as effective as we could have been in necessarily Afghanistan too. So Jeff, council member, what are your thoughts? How to keep from this happening again?
Trust me, I was, a Marine sniper and stuff like that. History repeats itself. Oh, okay. And you can look at any kind of warfare that's going on now, and you can look back in the past and you can say, hey, history is repeating itself. If you look at World War II, you can think of imperialism, a one world government, and a religion, all taking effect, back during World War II, and that same warfare is continuing today. So, yeah, I don't know. We look at the news and it's heartbreaking and stuff like that. But what can we do? We go out there and we fight and we give it our all and stuff like that, and we get done with it. And we're like, what the hell? Can we make a difference? Or did we make a difference? You always question that. But at the end of the day, you got to think, yeah, I did my part, and I gave it my all. So I feel for Brian, and I feel for you guys that were over there and stuff like that had experienced what you experienced, because it was the longevity that's within you, that stays with you. I completely understand. My war was short, and but anyhow, love you guys. There we go. That's my comment.
Ricardo, what are your thoughts?
How do we keep this from happening again? Yeah. We start by having a plan when we go in. I think that would be useful. Maybe finish our plate at the dinner table, put it up before we start thinking about what's next to eat. So we started a mission in Afghanistan. Should have probably seen it through until the mission was accomplished there, to use President Bush's term, before we went off into Iraq, and then fired the government during debathification, and fired the army, essentially. All the people that knew where all the munitions and whatever were. And then we kicked off a whole bunch of sectarian violence that I was really wild to experience that and to see that firsthand go down. And it's one of those things where it should just be blatantly evident, self-evident, that there needed to be some serious considerations made about our tactics early on, and the fact that it dragged on for 2 decades. And the global war on terror is still not over. It's still going on real time. There's all kinds of engagements taking place, right? From a citizen's perspective, I would say, like, it's time to turn off the distractions. It's time to turn off of your favorite football team, or your favorite baseball team, or your Olympics, or your favorite movie, or whatever your favorite soundtrack coming out is, and pay attention to what's going on. Like, there's real life situations beyond just Afghanistan taking place that require our attention, that require action. What it takes, how we prevent this from happening again, hopefully, God willing, is we need to pay attention. We need to turn around as people who share this place, and it's difficult to really to say anything because we're here stuck. I have a decade of this cannabis fight, and I'm gonna go back to it because it's a declared war on the American people, the war on drugs, right? I think we should start with addressing the outdated, bigoted mentality. And there's a lot of people, I think Mr. Buckley's right, that should be escorted out of DC. I think they've served their time there. They're outdated in their mindset and with their reactionary policies. And we're all bearing witness to it, and a lot of us are suffering in it. But again, like, we're here, some of us on this call with over 3 decades in this fight to try to gain access to an herb, a plant. We have a lot of people that have had their lives ruined because of a plant. And when we start talking about like legit geopolitics beyond the war on drugs, which created the cartels, it's got its own wake of disaster, right? But man, like, we need to start being able to get in there, have real time, legit, no bullshit conversations about serious issues. No politics, put it the fuck away. People are dying, people are getting hurt. This is a cliff coming up that we're all gonna be jumping from. Nobody has parachutes for this one. And so it requires diligence, action. It's time for us to, plan, plot, strategize, mobilize, take action, do it. I'm sorry, I guess tonight's the night for rambling. I got some really good weed though, so I appreciate it.
We appreciate you and your thoughts, and they're all valid. And no, I didn't feel you were rambling in any way, shape, or form, the same way as I didn't feel Brian was earlier. Best way to have less veterans is to have less wars. I don't think anybody is. We knew the war was coming to an end. We knew it was drawing down. We knew this situation had to end, and continuing it on was going to be challenging. So I don't think we were as upset about the war ending as much as how much as this exit strategy has been actually handled. And so I think I want to clarify that for our viewers to understand specifically. Brian, do you agree with that sentiment?
100%. It was time to go, just not that way.
I mean, we have an actual book on how to draw down and do things, and it seems they threw the book out the door for some reason, the same way the Trump administration did regarding COVID. And I don't understand this. Can you perhaps give us an understanding about why are we not making the strategic military decisions that we have in the past? What's so different that has led to this outright humanitarian disaster as opposed to protecting the people that we assisted?
It's like, I wish I had a simple answer, and I think I'm just like everyone else. I'm still kind of in shock, like how you couldn't draw up a worse plan than what they did. Essentially, talking to people who are over there, what the previous administration set up, it was very much a conditions-based withdrawal, which that works. Ideally, the goal was to get everyone out there by May 1st. Reason being, just like I said before, that's the start of fighting season. So they kind of wanted to get everyone out prior to that. But if conditions weren't being met, you cannot speed things up just because you want to make a certain timeline. You got to kind of let it run and play out to ensure that things are going properly. I knew things were a problem when in June you started seeing things with provisional capitals being attacked, which was not part of the deal. Basically, it was if the Taliban started taking over territory by force, that would trigger us to respond to them. When I saw Bagram go down as fast as it did, and that was us, we just withdrew for whatever reason, probably the most hardened site we could have stayed, which was a very key, vital area just due to the multiple runways, all that stuff. That seemed like we were just trying to meet some artificial timeline. And then when I heard the current United States president say, you know, September 11th, we're out of there. I mean, it's like at that point, pretty much the Taliban's like, you know, sharpening their knives and putting in their little apron, getting ready to eat. Like they just knew, well, here we go. It's only a matter of time. And, you know, one of my buddies I talked to, I think said it best, where he's like, we had a strategic breakdown, how things were going systematically. We were taking out things and doing the appropriate way. Then all of a sudden everyone threw their hands up in the air and just run away. But this is very basic concepts. If you just look at how to do a strategic or tactical withdrawal, I mean, you start breaking down, start getting the civilians out of there, start getting your equipment back. And then the last people leaving should be the military guys. It's, again, very much common sense. But I think there was a lot of people who wanted to meet an artificial timeline. It sounds like people were ignoring some things that were coming up. You're hearing some intel agencies coming out that they were hopping up and down, knowing this might happen. And I think we lost focus. You know, I always remember what they told me way back in the day when I was a young second lieutenant, right? But they said the most dangerous time on a raid is when you're doing your withdrawal, because you turn your back to the enemy and complacency can kick in. And it seems like one of those things where we had a terrible withdrawal. I think commanders, I think, you know, Joint Chiefs of Staff, I mean, that's a hard look. That they were allowing this to go down and losing focus like that at the end. That's one of the things. But this, basically what they did was so backwards, I'm having a hard time like even getting it out to you guys.
I just want people to kind of understand that because there may be some confusion, because the media has been quite confusing to people lately. Okay. The Trump administration had basically ended the war as we know it, and it was up to drawdown, and it was up to the Biden administration to actually do this drawdown at this time. And apparently the wheels came off. Unsure why. So.
And one thing too, what was frustrating, we really need to drive this home at the end. Like everyone's in agreement withdrawal. I mean, overwhelming amount of Americans. And there is some spin coming out just from the White House where they're like, well, everyone wanted to withdraw. It's like, no, we're not talking about the withdrawal. We're there. We're just saying about the exit side. But, you know, it's just, I don't know. It was just so confusing how that all kind of went down on that side with the execution of it. And they seemed like, again, they were kind of putting themselves on this artificial timeline, and they're talking about American lives are being lost. We haven't lost an American over there since, I think it's been like 15, 16 months. Not saying that's not a bad thing, but when we put this agreement in place that if you engage Americans, we're going to come right back at you. We know where you live, all that stuff, we were kind of keeping a lid on it with these 2,500 people, you know, troops and all this different stuff that we had there. It just didn't seem like, why did we exacerbate this and kind of go into a freak out mode? Like we had to rip everyone out of there, and we literally forgot all the civilians and all the weapons. It's just so bizarre of how that kind of came to be. And it's going to be fascinating when we find out where that breakdown of communication was.
Well, Ryan, can I intervene?
Go ahead.
Well, you know, it's just kind of funny. I mean, we look at, can you hear me?
Yes.
What's kind of funny is, you know, here we are. What we have today is all these announcements. The president announced when we're going to withdraw all of our troops from, you know, Afghanistan, when we're going to do this, when we're going to do that. You know, you tell the enemy what you're doing, and they hype up their you know, they stroke the fire a little bit more. You know, they know where they can go, and you know, but we're announcing our exit. We're telling them, the enemy, everything that we're doing. So you know, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. You know, we've got all this media and stuff, and you have to look at warfare. And you know, social media is now part of that intelligence for the enemy and for us. You know, so there's my 2 bits.
Yeah, no doubt. Those are part of the realities that encompass the thing. This is it's a complicated issue. It's not something that's very simple, and unfortunately, it's as Brian stated. It's unfortunately this ineptitude is going to be costing lives that didn't have to be lost this way, and we could have done better. And so we have to do better in the future. We actually have books for this. There's school on how to do it. For some reason, the right people in charge, and that, as stated, the information isn't flowing through the channels as it needs to. So, as we know, this is a very tough and challenging conversation. You know, we want to honor those who went and fought, and our Afghan partners who fought alongside of us. There's you know, people saw today there was a police chief who was executed today, you know, who was an anti-Taliban. So our hearts are going out to those that are being literally hunted down as we speak, and are meeting some of the most horrific fates that didn't necessarily need to happen the way that they have. And you know, I still believe that my cousin who died didn't die in vain. He was there doing a job and working hard, and he did his job. He just happened to be leaving that job when he was killed. You know, that's just how it goes. Unfortunately, as you said, the most dangerous part is pulling out, and unfortunately, there's unfortunately too many missions that this has been an unfortunate reality for. But at the same time, there's a lot of resolve, and I know there's a lot of pain for Gold Star families, and wondering right now. And just to reiterate that fact that they did their jobs. They were asked to do a job, and they did it to completion. What was asked of them by their country, what they were asked to do, they did so willingly. And even though the country is no longer what our anticipation was it to be, if we ever knew what that was to be, we still cannot forget the sacrifices of those along the way that did their best to try to make that place a better place. Brian, can you speak toward this? I know you lost people on the ground. You were an officer there as a Marine Raider.
Yeah. You know, I think the last point you just brought up, Etienne, and Rico brought up as well, is, you know, for future leaders out there, whoever's watching this, if you're going to send men and women to war, you better establish a political objective, because it was kind of getting to the point, you know, I always reflect on Napoleon's corporal. Napoleon would always walk the line of battle, and he'd go up to his corporal and say, what are you supposed to be doing? And if they didn't know, he wouldn't yell at the corporal. He would go find the field marshal and light him up. And, you know, if you came up to me in the middle of Afghanistan and said, okay, what's your political objective? I really didn't know. What we were hearing was a counterinsurgency takes 20 years and you can train the next generation and then things start working out well. And clearly that wasn't it. But, you know, kind of going to what you're saying, Etienne, yeah, I mean, for our summer, when I was out there in 2012, we got there in May, and, you know, in June, one of my other fellow team commanders, he was shot and paralyzed. I was shot in July, but I was able to stay after 3 surgeries. And then the following month, you know, Captain Matt Manukian was killed along with Ryan Jeske and Sky Moat. And there was a lot of Green Berets, a lot of SEALs, and a lot of Raiders. It was just a bad summer, to the point one colonel said to me, you know, this is the bloodiest summer for Special Operation Forces since the Vietnam War. And that wasn't like a badge of honor. It was just the arena that we were in. And the amount of, you know, the hospital always had business. I'll just put it that way. But, you know, we could only control what we could control at the tactical level. And that's the majority of us. And I always thought everyone there performed, above and beyond. To me, you see the very best in people in war, and then you can see the very worst of people in war. And to see some of the sacrifices and how unselfish the people I served with were, it was really inspiring. I can remember when we first got there on our first mission, and we were doing a relief in place with another Raider team. And we came under heavy fire. First thing was a sniper fire, and it shot one of our dog handlers and got him right in the head, right on the roof. I mean, literally, he walked out the roof and bang. And a hail of bullets were flying everywhere. And you know who the first person on that roof was? It was an Afghan commando medic. And he was sitting there trying to pack and get his head and wrapping him up and do whatever he could under extreme fire. And he did not care because he wanted to take care of that Marine. And that's one of our partners that people said just gave up and let everyone through. I'll never forget the times. Unfortunately, we had what we call ramp ceremonies when you lose someone, and we'd go out to Bastion. We would, get them on the plane, send them off, and we have a formation. And my Afghan commandos and special forces were always the first ones out there in formation. And, whenever one of us would get hurt, it almost had to take time when the firefight ended and we got the medivacs and got everyone out of there. We'd almost have to calm down our commandos because they truly looked up to us as the big brother. They loved us. And, to hear what's going on with them now, I mean, it just breaks my heart. I mean, I saw it, I think it was like a month ago, and I saw a bunch of commandos and they surrendered. And the Taliban brought them into a town square and just murdered them. I mean, it was just a straight up shooting out, and he just killed them all. And it bothers me because, again, like I said, these I know the commandos and the special forces guys, they loved us. They loved working with us. They would do anything for us. And, we just kind of left them there hanging out, not ready. Again, the conditions weren't met. And it's just very frustrating to me that we really screwed up this end game. Because I thought they had a chance. Like I said, I thought Eastern Afghanistan would be Afghan held, and I just knew Western Afghanistan wouldn't. But now the whole damn thing is falling apart, except for the Panjshir Valley. But, I just really want people to understand that. I mean, people will do whatever it took to get over there to fight because they believed in what we were doing. We knew we were keeping things at bay and kind of taking the fight over there. I had a friend who's a double amputee who could have easily just got out of the military, but no, he fought his way to stay so he could go back out and do another deployment with us with 2 silver legs. And he just said, he's like, I'll do whatever it takes to defend this nation and to go out there and work with the Afghans the way we were able to work with them. I would do it all over again. So yeah, but like I said, I think all the men and women out there, Gold Star families, just know your loved ones gave everyone the best shot that they could out there, and really kind of move the dial and introduce them to some new things. And if you could see just the progress the women were making out there by being able to work in the military, by some of them were working in law and becoming judges and teachers, and girls were actually able to go to school. And it was really kind of beautiful to see that. And now that's all gone. So you just hope maybe somehow, some way, something gets turned around. This isn't too late. I can't express that enough to the Biden administration. Yeah, it was a bad week, but you can correct this. I mean, I'm seeing the Brits go in, I'm seeing the French go in. They're going in and they're getting their people, and they're bringing them to the Kabul airport. Right now, we're saying, well, we hope the Taliban lets them through. I mean, our policy now is we hope the Taliban allows people through their cordon into Kabul, which is just unacceptable. We more than have the capability. We're just lacking the will, and that's starting at the top. But man, we could turn this thing around really quick. I mean, we are the United States of America, and we are a very powerful military, and we can calm this thing down and maybe back them off and lay down a whole new set of conditions, not even with a big force. We can do it very surgically, but just kind of give them the protection that they need for a little bit. But I don't know. That's just my little wish. It probably won't happen, but and say, yeah, men and women, wherever they're, thank you for everything. Ones who lost loved ones, I can't thank you enough. It was not in vain. I'm a very true believer. You save one life, you save a million lives, and there was definitely some heroic things out there. And to our Afghan counterparts, I'm really sorry.
Thank you for that very heartfelt response. And thank you for being here. I know it is not easy to talk about, but we appreciate you sharing with us and having the strength to do so, as well as speaking so eloquently. You're really damn good at it, sir. And we appreciate you. And please give your love and respect to your people for us. We're thinking of them for sure right now. So hasn't been an easy conversation. This is a challenging one. There's no easy answers. And as Brian stated, there is ways to fix this situation. We can't necessarily make it right. I do hope we see a change. I don't agree that policy is the one that we should be having as well. We should be doing everything we can to get our people out and filling as many C-17s as possible up. And somebody asked over in our on our Facebook, what do we do with the Afghan refugees that come here? How are they selected, etc. So what are some of those things, Brian? What are we already have an influx of people coming in and wondering where we put them. What happens here?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you start seeing kind of, I really don't try to watch the news, but obviously I've been watching a lot this week, where I start seeing commentators and talking about immigration and all this stuff, and people start going their political sides, and it's just a mess. This is a little different situation. Some of you may remembered what we were facing, especially in 2012, was what they called a insider attack, or green on blue. Blue is U.S. forces, and then green are our allies. And there was a lot of these insider attacks going on, and we're just losing a lot of military members inside bases and all that stuff. And in particular, when I talked about Captain Matt Manukian, Skyboat, and Ryan Jeske, that was an insider attack. It was a Afghani police officer, and he just did his thing, and it was a very tragic night. But I'll never forget that next morning after that happened. And I mean, this was a massive shock to a lot of people, to the point it got up to President Obama's desk. And we kind of did a little tactical stand down for a week, and we didn't know if we were going to continue the mission of what we were doing. We obviously didn't. It was the right call. But we brought in other government agencies, and we started taking a hard look on the vetting side. Again, Americans, we want things fast. We want things fast. We were just trying to fill up these forces, and probably didn't really understand who these people were, what they were, and we were paying for it. But these people have been extremely vetted. Our interpreters have been extremely vetted. I mean, probably more vetted than some of us have ever been. And, they're good to go. And so I would say, get them up to Germany, get them over to Italy. I know there's a base over there. Get them out of that harm's way. You can core them into a military base. And if you want to start going through that process of revetting and making sure they're not someone we wouldn't want in our country, i.e. a terrorist, then start bringing them over, because they deserve it. In particular, I would like some of the Afghan commanders and special forces. I would like for them to kind of hang around, because I think they can make a difference in their country if there is going to be resistance and to fight against the Taliban. I think they need to do it. I think in terms of our interpreters and their families, they have more than bought their ticket to freedom, and we need to get them out of there and get them here as fast as possible. And I want to be very blunt here. There was multiple reports that they grabbed one of our interpreters, they chopped off his arms, they took his DOD tag, melted into his body, then they killed him, and they killed the rest of his family, and then they took his 10-year-old daughter, and she's now going to be forced to marry someone. This is what we're facing. And I apologize if that's too much for people, but you have to understand how blunt and dire this situation is. So we got to get our act together. We got a lot of bases. We got a lot of people. We have a lot of NATO partners who are very upset, and they want to help as well. We got to get them out of there, because these people are a marked target. And the Taliban doesn't go around and start interrogating and asking questions. They will just destroy an entire village and take the little girls and do what they want to do with them. It's that bad. So I hear anyone start saying, oh, we can't let them in, or all this stuff in your country, bullshit. You weren't there. You don't understand it. You don't know what these people are and what they went through. Yes, they're a different culture and all that, and they're not Americans, but boy, do they love our way of life. And that's why they put their lives up with us, just so they could experience a little bit of freedom. So let's do the right thing and be expeditious about it and get those people over here because they more than deserve it.
Thank you for that clarification, because that has been a talking point I have seen kind of bubble up lately. And that was, my sentiment is that somebody has made their way to the interpreter status, the United States government, there had to be some sort of vetting along the way, needless to say. Councilmember Prieta.
I just wanted to add to that. These refugees, these people that are being evacuated out are going to be placed in various states. In Arizona, we already have groups of them coming in. And I'm looking forward to going out and volunteering to help them get assimilated and get situated, get their housing figured out, try to get them in school, the resources and services that they require. So there's ways to help them. You don't have to be in the military or the government. Just keep a lookout. And if you start to see news reports that you have groups of refugees coming into your area, maybe reach out and see how you can get involved.
And refugees are in all parts of our life. Oddly enough, and uniquely enough, my dentist was a child in Iraq and was evacuated from Iraq during my war and made his way to America. And now he's a dentist. He has his own dentistry shop, is a complete productive member of our society. And I trust him with my mouth all the time. And so these are the benefits that we also get from having people who come from all walks of life. I found them to be warm, amazing, and top of that, some of the most amazing American citizens I've ever come across as productive members of society, sometimes more so than some people I know who are actually born on this soil. And I think I see a lot of nodding heads. I think they're just saying, I'd be more than happy to live right next to somebody who walked 3,000 miles to be next to me, because they care that much. And these people have risked anything and everything for their ability to have this freedom. And we deserve to reward them accordingly, more so than what we're doing. And unfortunately, we have a responsibility here and one we must follow through on. So as we kind of look toward wrapping this conversation up, again, we want to work on things that are positive. So what are some good things that you're doing to engage yourself after service? There's politics, there's school, civic engagement, diplomacy, arts, being out in the wilderness. Myself, I found being active in the cannabis community has been very helpful in my ability to find a voice for myself. And top of that, I found a self-satisfaction to stave off my post-traumatic stress greatly by helping out others selflessly. It's an amazing gift that we have with life, and kind of the gravy a lot of those of us who hit the battlefield we feel afterwards, and those after service, we have found different avenues. Michael has served as a person in the war on drugs, as a general in that war. So I consider you as just as much as a combat veteran as any of us that have served, Michael, because this has been hard fought. You've lost friends, family, and others around you fighting for this. So, much respect to you.
Thank you, sir.
But at the same time, it does, harken back to what Rico was stating, is that, we have to look at this, this war on our people and this war on drugs. If we're going to refocus there, we need to also refocus on things here. So, I encourage people to get active, find a local organization, plug in, get involved, educate yourself on the issue, challenge yourself to know more, and then to go out, talk about it. engage people, have conversations, start podcasts, start newsletters, start an organization, but cannabis is how I found my way and my voice. So what are some things that you guys have found? What are you doing, Brian, to not only cope, but strive? You're right now trying to provide cannabis on the retail level and funding cannabis research with veterans. So you're definitely not resting on your laurels per se, but what are you doing yourself to process and handle all this?
Sure. I always look at things, control what you can control. And, it's like having talks with some of the guys I served with, and it's like, oh man, we should get over there and do this, that, and that, just good, tough guy talking. But we all know that's not a reality. It's not my war anymore. The war I'm fighting now is what's happening to our veterans, just like all of you are fighting. And I love it. Not what's happened to our veterans. I'm just saying I love the opportunity that I have. Definitely cannabis has saved my life in more ways than one. Not only has it just been great for my post-traumatic stress, but I always told everyone for a while, I just felt like a Marine without a mission. This is now my mission. So, typical, I just kind of throw myself into what I can control and just continue to work hard on the overarching mission. And, honestly, being around you guys definitely helps out. Monday was kind of a tough day, and not surprising. The first guy outside of my unit who reaches out to me is the ATN, just to say, hey man, like, little buddy check, how are we doing? But yeah, it's like, keep busy. That's what I'm doing. I'm keeping busy. I'm working out, doing all that stuff just to make my body right. But then also I don't want to, hold all this anger or like I said, I can't even, it's like bewilderment I'm in right now. I mean, I can't even describe it almost, but I will never let that fester in me, because I know what happens when you just kind of put a lid on it and try to, bottle it up and not talk about it. It can get really bad at some points. So, situations like this, I really enjoy coming up and talking about it. And, even some people it's kind of funny. I go into stores, and obviously we're Helmand Valley Growers Company, and, everyone knows our people that we work with know our background. They're just like, oh my God, like, what's happening? And I like kind of sitting there and talking to them and educating them, because I never know if I'm going to be talking to a future congressperson or a senator or a president. I don't know. But I want them to understand the realities of the battlefield, what we go through and what we're facing when we come back. And just hopefully that helps them make more adult and mature situations, unlike what we're facing right now. And so I'm just going to keep doing this. I want to keep talking on. I'm not going to shy away from it. And, there's going to be a lot of veterans in stress, and I think they need all of us, Veterans Action Council, kind of maybe more than ever right now, because this was really something none of us would have predicted would have happened. No way. And it did. But that's been helping me out a lot. And, I think after our talk on Wednesday, guys, to be honest, just haven't been sleeping a lot this week, but like last night was the first time I got about 6 hours, and I just want to thank you guys, because I just got some things off my chest. And, no doubt I'll go up there and have some GMO and sherbet for my man, Andy, and maybe forget where I am for about 10 minutes, but that's all good. I'll just walk up to my bed and go to sleep. So that is what I'm doing. Back to you, good sir.
Right on, right on. Yes, cannabis. Yeah, so a thing. Why hasn't science realized that the high is also therapeutic?
It sure is fun.
It is fun, but it's also relaxing, enjoyable, all the above. But thank you for sharing us how you handle this. So Rico, how do you handle the bad news, the difficult, the challenges like these that strike home?
Oh, well, I'm a lot different than I'm used to. You know what I mean? Like I said, when I got back from my war, I ended up in psych ward, flipping out, caught some charges, just a little bit of probation, stuff like that, a couple one-nighters in jail. And now I just choose to just engage with these goons. You know what I mean? Like these puppies right here. And then I get active in my community. I give back. The harder it gets, the harder I get back. And I'm looking forward to meeting new people, new organizations that are out there Coming up, I'm going to be working on this trail that's dedicated to Gabe Zimmerman, who was killed in the shooting on Gabrielle Giffords, Congresswoman Giffords here in Tucson on January 8th. They dedicated a trail to him. So the Arizona Trail Association is going to partner with the Pima County Parks and Recreation, get a bunch of veterans and supporters together and stuff. And I don't know, I choose to be productive instead of destructive these days. And the worse I feel, like the stronger the desire to just go and create something, or go and try to appreciate something, or try something new, maybe engage something that's out of my comfort zone, that forces me to maybe empathize with others a bit more, that I necessarily want to try to associate with or engage. You know what I mean? It's easy to get stuck in my silo. I have compartments within my silo at times. But routine, like in the military, routine's important. You know, so getting up, having my coffee, doing my routines in the morning, saying good morning to these goons, and then getting on, trying to be productive for the group, try to help advance our mission that we have in this war on drugs, that we will win. We've already won. It's just the paperwork needs to be finalized. So I'm looking forward to the psychedelic push now, and what comes next as far as mindfulness is concerned. It's not all bad. It's bad. It's fucking horrible. We're in a tight spot, but it's not all bad. And we're still here. We're still breathing. We're still kicking around. That means we still have a fucking chance. And so as long as I'm still kicking, as long as I still have breath in me, I'm going to look for the people doing good and try to attach myself to them at the hip and roll out until we change the situation and can breathe a bit more. But I want to jump off my soapbox.
That's a beautiful soapbox, sir. So Michael, how do you handle, what do you do in these situations?
Yeah, it can be frustrating. The power of understatement there. Yeah, I don't know. You know, the work that I've done over the years has been big things, but I've never really sought out to do big things. You know, I've looked at very small things actually, and paid very close attention to those very small things. And after quite a while, if I was lucky, they led to big things. So that's what I would recommend, is pay attention to small things. You know, like what Ricardo was saying, you know, community, right in your own community, there might be an opportunity to give back or to help. If you want to participate and contribute, it's not an abstract reality. It might be something you can actually do nearby in your world. I sort of compartmentalize a lot of this stuff, and I sort of have faith that others are taking care of what I'm not looking at, because you just can't do everything. I try to pay attention to what falls in my lap, what crosses my desk, and we have had, you know, we've got partners that we've worked with over there in Vienna at the United Nations from Afghanistan. Several of them actually have been working with us on drug policy over these last few years. the relationship that we have as a cannabis people. I mean, that's really amazing. I you know, don't want to diminish anything else by talking about pot all the time, but man, damn, you tell me if you remember this, but you go into one of these bed and breakfast kind of hotels right in the center of Amsterdam about 2:30 in the morning, and everybody's asleep except for the person behind the counter, obviously, that runs the intake for the hotel. And then sitting at the counter somewhere would be an American or an Aussie or a Canadian or something like that, Brit, and they'll be smoking hash 2:30 in the morning because it just tastes so damn good. And they don't want to stop the experience. It's just absolutely beautiful experience. And that's not just, by accident. That's a lot of love into that product. I remember Red Eye article that our buddy over there, JP Morgan from Amsterdam, wrote this article about hash. And I just had this mental picture of going in this border town little store where this fellow's sitting on a stool, and on the wall are all these baggies with these curls. They look like if you ever had one of those incense curls that you put on a thing and it goes around in a circle, but it was hash in a circle curl. I've never gotten a chance to buy one of those or even look at one, but I saw a picture in the magazine. It just kind of stuck in my brain. But you're talking about hash that tastes so good, and it's an experience that you really have to experience. You can't, there's nothing else that you can extrapolate it from. You have to experience it. And in my world, the only hash that really did better was from Turkey. That's another story. We live in one world, and we need to kind of figure this shit out better. I don't know, this sort of totalitarian religious rule, it's fine until you start overtaking people's human rights and breaking the norms of basic human behavior that we set after World War II. And then that's not cool anymore. Then you're not just some freaky little group out on an island. You're actually pissing us off. So I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Staker, how do you handle these types of situations? How do you bring positiveness into your life?
I don't know. I must be the old man, so I just take it one day at a time. So, I really appreciate this conversation and stuff, and the way I see this conversation this evening is, we all bring our war experiences together, whether peacetime or military, during combat, and I think we all going to contribute to the cause that we have in fighting for cannabis here in the United States and stuff like that. And there's a lot of battles that we've got to fight, and we just need to come together, and like we are right now. And I really appreciate this conversation, and that's the way I see it. I'm the optimist, so I'm always the glass is always half full with me. So there you go.
All right. Well, keep your glasses full if you can, but of course, half full ain't so bad either. Our brothers and sisters over to Operation EVAC put out a great graphic this week for those. If you haven't seen it, it's if I'm feeling, then I'll. So, such as if I'm feeling overwhelmed, then I'll prioritize and execute. I like that. There's a few of these here. If I'm feeling sad, then I'll give it space and replace it with action. If I'm feeling grief, memorialize and move forward. If I'm feeling lonely, then I'll contact community. If I'm feeling inadequate, celebrate your strengths. Everyone's got them. You all have beautiful gifts. Some things others can't do. Each one of us here has our own. So what's yours? If I'm feeling inadequate, if I'm feeling frustrated, detach and re-engage. There's nothing wrong with stepping away from something for a minute. All of us get heated. It's hard not to be passionate about some of these things, as you could hear specifically from, Brian, from his experience and the passion that comes through. It's okay to step away. And then when you gained your strength, or you feel that you've been able to get your head right or where it needs to be, then re-engage. Okay. If I'm feeling anxious, then I'll breathe, stretch, and meditate. So great time for some yoga and some stretches. So I want to thank our council members. I'm going to wrap things up, and I'm going to kind of just read down a list of some contacts and emergency information. So if you're having a hard time right now and you need to reach out and you want some help, there is the Veterans Crisis Line. If you're having thoughts of suicide, call 1-800-273-8255, then press 1, or visit the veteranscrisisline.net. For emergency mental health, you can also go directly to your local VA medical center 24/7, regardless of your discharge status or enrollment in any other VA care. Vet centers discuss how you feel with other veterans in these community-based counseling centers. 70% of vet center staff are veterans. You can call 877-927-8387 or find one near you. The VA Mental Health Service Guide. This guide will help you sign up and access medical health services. MakeTheConnection.net, information resources, veteran to veteran videos for challenging life events and experiences with mental health issues. Sorry, it took a break. Rally Point. Talk to other veterans online. Discuss what are your feelings as the Taliban reclaim Afghanistan after 20 years of U.S. involvement. Download the VA's self-help apps, tools to help deal with common reactions like stress, sadness, and anxieties. You can also track your symptoms over time. The Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, or TAPS. Request a peer mentor. VA Women's Veterans Call Center. Call or text 855-829-6636, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The VA Caregiver Support Line. Call 855-260-3274, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Together We Serve. Find your battle buddies through unit pages. The George W. Bush Institute. Need help? Want to talk? Check in or call 1-630-522-4904. Irony in that one? No. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I went there. Yeah. I'm a dick. All right. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation, Hidden Heroes. Join the community. American Red Cross Military Veterans Caregiver Network, peer support and mentoring. Team Red, White, and Blue, hundreds of events weekly. Find a chapter in your area. Student Veterans of America, find a campus chapter to connect with. Team Rubicon, find local support. So these are information that's provided currently by the VA in support in this most challenging and difficult time, because we know people are struggling at different ways and at different levels, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. It's okay to admit you need help. It's okay to get help. There's no need to prolong it and harm those around you or self-harm yourself. Please, if you have the ability, reach out. With that in mind, I love and respect you all. I'd like to thank our esteemed veterans and the Veterans Action Council who joined us tonight. Council members Brian Buckley, Ricardo Prieta, Jeff Staker, and Michael Crowitz. I'm Etienne Fontan. I would like to thank you for your time and your understanding. And please, again, if you have veterans, reach out to them, check in with them, see how they're doing. It's a rough time right now, and it's okay as long as we can acknowledge it and talk about it and confront it. It's a lot better than hiding about it. We don't need more suicides due to the situation. We need more people to fix this situation. All hands on deck. So much love, much respect, and we'll be back in 2 weeks for Veterans Action Council Roundtable number 23. Thank you very much.